In stocks, of course, tobacco and alcohol and all sorts of other things. Anyway, I caught up yesterday with a chap called Derek Auret. It was an interesting chat. The proposed amendments to SA's income tax laws could see a squeeze in profit margins for the casino and gaming industry. The sector may face 1% gaming tax, which could take effect from April next year. In fact, it's almost certain that it will. For a look at the matter, I spoke to Derek Auret, the CEO of the Casino Association of South Africa. Here's that chat.
I think it's quite substantial. I just had a look at the latest figures for the 2011-2012 financial year, and gross gaming revenue of the entire gambling sector was approximately 18.4 billion rand. Now, the casinos probably account for about 80% of that revenue, and it will therefore have a huge impact on us. 18.4 billion GGR, that gives you about 184 million in additional tax, which will go to the fiscus. And obviously the casinos will be in for about 80% of that.
Which is a soft target though, isn't it? Of course, it has to be. It's like cigarettes and petrol and everything else. So you can't really blame, because you know what happens when there is an economic slowdown. Soft targets become natural targets, and they keep on going. So this could be the first of maybe even more in the future.
Indeed, and I think that's a huge concern to the industry per se, and also to casinos. It's a concern for a number of reasons. Nikki mentions in her press release that there will be costs involved, obviously, but it will impact on casino profits, and it will impact on what casinos are able to do in terms of their properties. It may impact even on jobs. The industry, the casino industry, let me make it clear that just the casino industry sustains approximately 53,000 jobs at the moment.
Yes.
That's a huge number. Despite the very tough economic conditions out there over the past couple of years, the industry has not retrenched a single person. So we have maintained 53,000 jobs through very, very difficult trading times. It may be that the imposition of this additional tax could have a negative effect on certainly on jobs. It will definitely have a negative effect on job creation, which seems to be a high government priority at the moment, as it should be. And it will have other side effects for the industry and for the industry doing business. You will know that the number of casino licenses in South Africa are finite. They have been placed at 40 by law, and it doesn't seem that there'll be any expansion. So companies are not able to expand their facilities in South Africa.
But of course they will be creative, because when industries are faced with some new legislation or some headwind or some hurdle, they always reinvent themselves. And I'm sure the casino industry will be no different.
No question about that. It is a very creative industry, excepting that the creativity might not take place in South Africa. It might take place at operations abroad.
Sun International, of course, being present in Chile, for example.
Indeed. And I know that some of my other members, CASA members, are looking elsewhere as well. And that's the great pity, that the creativity could extend to doing things elsewhere instead of doing it here. Because what else can you do here? You can diversify your product, which the industry has done. Casinos are not standalone facilities. In other words, it does not only provide opportunities for gambling. It attempts to present a total entertainment package for the entire family. Restaurants, theaters, ice rinks, bird parks, etc., etc., etc. In addition, it, certainly in the case of Johannesburg, plays a very large role in maintaining and sustaining the Sandton Convention Centre. It does play a role at the Cape Town Convention Centre, both of which incidentally would not have been there had it not been for the seed money from the industry at the time of bidding for the licenses in question.
Understood. You're doing a very good job of promoting the casino industry as a responsible part of the South African economy, but what I'm guilty of now is not actually explaining what this tax is. So maybe you could do it. Is it a tax on the gamblers? Is it a tax on the companies themselves?
No. The initial announcement by the finance minister was for a tax on winnings above 25,000 rand, which would have been, I think, at the level of 15%. Now, the fact that, well, what then happened was that we actually took Treasury and showed them how difficult it would be to in fact implement a tax like that. If you have a win of 25,000 at the table, you'd have to stop the game for at least 20 minutes before you could continue, because you'd have to do all the details, the paperwork.
So let's say that if I managed to save up, and it won't happen, but if I managed to save up 25,000, went down to the Grand West now, put 25,000 on red, and red came up.
Yes.
Then that winning would be isolated, would it?
Yes, it would have to be, because you'd have to get the details, etc., to comply with the tax under that proposal.
What if I lost it on the next one, though?
Well, that was the whole point. You know, what were you going to tax? Were you going to tax total winnings? Were you going to tax winnings minus losses? It was a whole conundrum, and I think Treasury, when they visited us at a couple of facilities, saw what these difficulties were. The next thing we heard was the proposal of the 1% withholding tax on GGR, which from a Treasury perspective is probably much easier to police, in quotation marks, and from an industry perspective places less of a burden on the punter, of course. Industry will have to pay that from GGR, and it will have the consequences which we've already talked about. The fact that it's changed from a withholding tax on winnings to a withholding tax on GGR is cold comfort, of course, to the industry, because it is still an additional tax. It might also have a negative effect on the revenue which accrues to provinces from gambling taxes and levies. And I might point out that that is quite a serious matter, because gambling taxes and levies for provinces constitute probably in many cases the largest or the second largest source of own income to provincial revenue. So it will definitely have an impact on that, and you know, that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Okay. So you, as the Chief Executive of the Casino Association of South Africa, presumably are continuing to lobby against this, but it looks as though it is going to go ahead.
Oh, I think it's a foregone conclusion. I do not think that there's any chance of getting away from this one. Treasury will proceed with this no matter what. I think they've made that clear, and we are expecting consultations with them in the near future. They have just recently published the tax amendment bill, which deals with other matters flowing from the budget, and I think we're next, because that will have to be a money bill which will have to be introduced and put through Parliament.
Derek, of course, what will happen is that more international acts will come to South Africa and will go to these places, and as I say, the creativity of the industry will prevail. Are people prepared for it, though? Just a final question. Is the industry prepared for it? Because it didn't come up during my conversation recently with Sun International.
I think the industry is prepared for all eventualities. They are a bunch of people who really know their business. They know the entertainment industry. They know how to diversify. They know, as you pointed out earlier, how to be creative. And I'm sure that they're going to do that. When you mention foreigners coming to these shores, I assume you mean acts and performers, because tourists definitely don't gamble. So that is a misnomer. It is the international community, and international tourism is not going to help us out of this hole.